Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report at the remnants of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. NTSB drone footage shows the cargo ship that took down much of the 1.6-mile-long structure. Its bow girdled in steel and stacked with asphalt. CBS crews captured video of its on-ramp, which now leads only to reminders of disaster. Handheld and drone cameras are used to capture photos before cleanup, the start to what is expected to be a 2-year investigation. Also a part of Phase 1, conducting interviews with the ship staff, reviewing the ship's Voyager data recorder, engine data, manufacturer information, and inspection and maintenance history. Then at least 6 specialized teams piece together those details for a report containing the cause and sequence of events. And finally, the NTSB will issue safety recommendations, though those could come earlier in this case. Kris van Cleave has the latest.
From the water, the scope of the accident is enormous. The cargo ship Dolly is almost as long as the Chrysler Building in New York City is tall. The wreckage sits where it fell early Tuesday morning, blocking access to one of the nation's busiest ports. We're surveying the damage with the commander of the Army Corps of Engineers.
The president called me yesterday and we spoke for a few minutes, and he made it clear this was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' #1 priority.
Will this be an around-the-clock effort?
We're going to go 24/7.
That sounds like a massive effort.
It is a massive effort.
General Scott Spellman's team will work with crews from the Navy and Coast Guard to begin the salvage efforts to clear the waterway and allow divers to recover the remaining 4 bodies believed to be trapped beneath the rubble.
It's not just all this debris that you can see in this massive cargo ship. It's also everything that's sunk to the bottom. Tons of debris that's 50 feet down. It all has to come off the floor before this channel and the Port of Baltimore can reopen.
Already, there is a traffic jam of cargo ships unable to get in or out of the Port of Baltimore, plus 2 cruise ships that won't be able to return to the Charm City port that employs 8,000 people.
This is a core economic engine for our state, and we have to make sure that our workers are protected.
New video shows traffic early Tuesday morning on the Francis Scott Key Bridge and that construction crew filling potholes, moments before the dollies slammed into it. And now our first look on board the giant vessel as NTSB investigators work to gather evidence and continue interviews with the ship's 21-person crew. The dolly's voice data recorder shows about 90 seconds after the first sign of trouble, the onboard pilot called for help, asking nearby tugboats to respond. Less than a minute later, the Mayday call. Then the devastating collision. The damage on board is extensive. Part of the bridge came down on the bow, leaving a deep gash. Cargo containers with hazardous material sit sheared open.
When you get out here on the water and you look at that, you really get a sense for the massive effort that we're dealing with.
The Army Corps of Engineers has to clear a 700-foot wide channel to get the port back open. Now, the Navy is bringing in the largest floating crane on the East Coast overnight. It can lift up to 1,000 tons, but they think the piece of bridge laying across the ship weighs 3 or 4 times that. John?
Wow. Kris van Cleave. Thank you, Kris. The NTSB says more than 30,000 vehicles used to cross the bridge daily. When it collapsed, it was the construction workers repairing the road to keep cars flowing who fell into the water. 2 rescued, 6 dead. Nicole Sganga has more on the lives of the victims.
Baltimore County Police survey the wreckage from 1,200 feet.
Nothing prepares you for a boat colliding into the bridge.
Even after you see it, and it's still just so surreal.
In the hours after the collapse, this thermal imaging technology was used to scour for victims.
That was our main focus that night around 4 a.m. When we first got here, was utilizing the thermal imaging just to try to locate anybody.
Transmitting real-time images like these to those on the ground.
Oh, wow, so that's a vehicle.
On Wednesday, Maryland State Police pulled the bodies of Alejandro Hernandez Fuentes and Dorlean Castillo Cabrera out of the river, but divers are unable to reach the 4 people still missing.
Because of the amount of concrete and debris, divers are no longer able to safely navigate or operate around that.
Tonight, we're learning more about the victims. The brother of minor Yasir Suazo Sandoval tells CBS News he wishes he could have stopped his brother from going to work. Moises Diaz was scheduled to fill potholes on the Key Bridge Tuesday, but his shift was changed. Every day we give thanks to God for life, Diaz tells us. He's grieving the loss of 6 fellow construction workers, men he calls brothers. I saw my friends as family members. And Diaz tells us the miraculous story of his friend Julio Cervantes, one of 2 rescued. He says Cervantes escaped his sinking truck by crawling out the window. He thought, I'm going to die here. Even though he can't swim, he survived.
Nicole Sganga joins me now from Baltimore. Nicole, what are the victims' families telling you?
John, the victims' families right now are in absolute agony. So are their friends and this very tight-knit community that we have come to know. I spoke with Moses Diaz. He was a construction worker who called all of these victims brothers. He was supposed to work on the bridge Tuesday morning, filling potholes, and had a shift change at the last minute. And he met with one of the survivors, Julio Cervantes, just yesterday and told us his unbelievable escape story, that he was in his vehicle when the bridge collapsed and sunk down, submerged in water, crawling through the window of his truck in order to escape. Didn't know how to swim, but miraculously floated to the debris where paramedics retrieved him. He is suffering from chest injuries and has stitches on his leg, but is now stable. And the real message that Moses Diaz told us tonight is that many of these immigrant families, who are, some have been in the country for quite some time, some less time, really feel as though their stories are being overlooked, that everyone is focused on the bridge, but they are really suffering. And beyond just the physical injuries right now that Julio Cervantes is dealing with, the deepest pain is his trauma. And, Moses Diaz telling us that he can't stop picturing the bridge collapse, seeing it in his mind play out over and over again.
Oh. And Nicole, you also flew with police to survey the scene. What did you see?
Yeah, we flew with the Baltimore County Police Department. These were some of the first pilots up in the air in the early hours after the bridge collapsed, and they showed us with infrared technology how they desperately scoured for victims but were unable to find them. Now they're assisting first responders, teams on the ground, and soon some of these salvage efforts, and just giving them real-time pictures from 1,200 feet above. Right now, you can see just massive amounts of debris. The ship obviously lodged under, just tons of this bridge. We know that there are cranes that are being moved right now that can lift up to 1,000 tons, so waiting on that. But we also saw floating containers, some sheen on the water, obviously concerns from NTSB and other federal and local authorities about hazardous materials right now. All of this adding up to a really long road ahead, John.
Nicole Sganga, thank you.